This is Scott, your photo instructor, and this is my debut attempt at making a screen capture instructional video. So let's see how this is going to go. All right, so what I want to do is cover the process of transferring a color image into black and white in Lightroom. I'm going to make a second video that's going to address a slightly different issue, which would be the aesthetics of changing a color to a black and white, or really more the, what's the difference aesthetically between a color and a black and white image. So this video is going to address the technical stuff, and I'm going to have a follow-up video kind of look a little bit more at the aesthetic issues of the difference between a color and a black and white image. Okay, this is a color photograph. It's a lovely color photograph taken in a Japanese garden, and you can see that when the photographer took this picture, they made a certain aesthetic choice. You notice that red tree very prominently in the middle of the photograph. The color of that tree really pops out because it is red and it is in front of a bunch of other contrasting colors. You've got the green trees behind it, the yellow trees around it, the green foliage in front of it. I think really without question, looking at this photograph, I don't think there's any question about the fact that the photographer obviously meant that red tree to be a strong point of this photograph. Now, we're going to use this photograph in Lightroom as one of the examples that I'm going to show you. And it's a particularly interesting example because it's a really good example that shows up what some of the problems are that come up when you take a color photograph and transfer it into black and white. Because though it may seem a little bit hard to tell right now, okay, this image in color, that red really pops out. However, in black and white, it doesn't. And the reasons why require a little bit of more in-depth understanding about the nature of color photography and black and white photography. So, of course, color photography is based on certain principles about the nature of light and the nature of color. All light, white light as it naturally exists, is actually the equal presence of all colors. Okay, so you can take white light and then split it apart, and it can be split apart to become all the various different colors in the entire color spectrum. Now, color photography uses this principle, and it's called the additive color wheel, and that it takes three primary colors, okay? So every color photograph is basically made up of many pixels that record just three colors: red, green, and blue. Hence the anagram RGB, red, green, blue. Those are the primary colors of light, and when you take those three primary colors, red, green, and blue, you combine them all together, you of course get white. Now, if you combine just two of them, then you get the secondary colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow. Those are the secondary colors, and then of course in this relationship, then you also get the complementary colors, or the colors that are opposite to each other on the color wheel. That would be cyan and red, yellow and blue, magenta and cyan. So primary colors, secondary colors, and then the complementary colors. So color, of course, is just the appearance of light that happens to come on various different wavelengths, okay? Light, it's one of those odd things at the basic level. It is both a particle and a wave. Light is one of the functions of, color is one of the functions of light as a wave. And it just basically, light that is coming in at different wavelengths, that's what gives it various different colors. There are actually colors that we cannot see, human beings cannot see. Infrared is one of them. Ultraviolet is another. There are animals that do actually see these colors outside of our visible spectrum. They do see infrared and ultraviolet. There are also some cameras that can record the colors infrared and ultraviolet. Your camera won't do that. Those would be highly specialized cameras, but they do exist. So this is actually a diagram. This is one of the sort of official diagrams that actually is used in the scientific definition of color. This is the International Commission on Illumination, 1976, Uniform Chromaticity Scale. This is actually one of the documents that helps to kind of define how people think about and discuss color. And it's got a lot of sciencey stuff all around it, you know, little numbers and little lines and diagrams. And I actually don't know what any of this means, but I recognize a triangle when I see one. It's basically a triangle, and look at what the corners of the triangle are: red, green, and blue. So this is basically where those primary colors come from. It really is kind of baked into the very nature of light, that you can use the three primary colors, and then just in different combinations of those primary colors, you get every possible color on the color spectrum. So, of course, black and white photography is also dealing with the recording of light, but it doesn't record, or it's not really dealing with this issue of the hue of light and how the different wavelengths appear as different colors, okay? In black and white photography, you're just looking at the amount of light or the intensity of light, okay? If something appears light in a black and white, it's because a lot of light reflected off of it. If something appears dark in a black and white photograph, it's because not a lot of light reflected off of it. So it's not about the different wavelengths of light, it's about the intensity of the light, how much light actually hit the sensor. And this is the thing that's the difference between black and white and color photography, because in a color photograph, things can stand apart because of the very, very strong color contrast that won't stand apart because they might actually reflect the same amount of light. So two things that are very, very, very different colors in real life, when you shoot them in black and white, or you show them in black and white, there may be very, very little difference between them at all. And this is the big thing to kind of overcome when you're trying to convert a color image to black and white. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch into Lightroom. And we're going to start off with this lovely little photograph right here. Now, this is a photograph that's just meant to kind of show, it's a fancy way of showing color, right? Got a bunch of different paint cans. They put different color paint into them, take a photograph of it. But obviously, by the way, somebody kind of picked all of these different colors and arranged all of these different paint cans. And it really gives the effect of having like a variety of colors. You got this very strong magenta, this very strong red, you got the yellow, the blue, the green, it's a variety of various different colors that you see. Now, when we transfer this to black and white, okay, I'm going to first show you the dumb way to transfer an image from color into black and white. Now, the way you do that in Lightroom is you go to the color adjustment, you go to the saturation adjustment, and you just take the saturation adjustment and bring it all the way down until there's no color in there anymore. Okay? This is the way most people do it. This is the easiest way to take a color image and make it black and white. If you're editing on a phone, this is the main way that you do it. If you shoot on your camera in the black and white mode on your camera, this is basically what it does. This is the worst way to do it. The reason why it's the worst way to do it, well, there's really an infinite number of possible interpretations of how you can take a color photograph and make it a black and white photograph. What this version does is it gives you one of them. There's millions of different possible ways that you can take a color image and make it black and white. This is one of them. And it's almost guaranteed never to be the best one, okay? Because if you look at it, what used to be, and I'm going to go ahead and click this little button down here. This is the sort of show the original. So this photograph, which originally was this very rich variety of colors, it becomes, yeah, I mean, there's some variety of the grays and the tones in there, but a lot of those paints, you know, they look like very similar in tone. I'm going to jump over real quick to our tree image. Now, we talked about this one. You see that red in the tree? When if I just kind of do this desaturation, okay, that red tree just kind of sinks into all of the other ones. And again, I'm just going to go back and forth. And you see how that red tree really pops out in the color, and it just sinks into the background in the other one. Here's another interesting example. Okay, this lovely photograph by the great English photographer by the name of Martin Parr. It's a photograph of some green beans sitting in a little plastic basket. If I do my desaturation mode on this, look at that. You know, a lot of the life of this original image really comes from that color contrast between the red and the green. And when you just desaturate, there is no difference between the red and the green. That red and the green, though they are very different colors, they have the same value, okay? And that's what gets recorded in a black and white photograph. There's no color. What we have is value. Just the different ranges of lights and darks. Here's another one. Also by Martin Parr. Lovely image of a dyed poodle. That poor dog. But again, the color relationships that you have in the color photograph, when you desaturate, it just, you know, I mean, you can still kind of see it, but like, you know, like look at the dog's feet, the red foot, the blue foot, and then when you take that color out, it really just de-emphasizes that, okay? So, so that's not the smart way of doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and change my saturation back. I'm just going to go ahead and do it on all of them. I'm going to reset all of these, put them back to the way that they were before, okay? And go back to my color paint image. Now, the smart way to do this, okay? Instead of doing the desaturation, what you're going to do is you come right up here to the top and you're going to take the profile and you're going to take that profile and you're going to change it from color to monochrome, okay? Now, when you first do that, it basically looks like what the desaturation did. But that's just the first step. We've just changed it from a color image to a monochrome image, okay? But in Lightroom, when you do that, if you scroll down to the color tools, when you change it to the monochrome mode, then what it pulls up is the black and white mixer. Now, the black and white mixer, what this does basically is you can tell Lightroom and say you can target colors and say, take this particular color and make it lighter or darker, okay? Take this particular color and make it lighter or darker. Now, I think actually the best way to do this is, you know, you can kind of flip back and forth. I can look at the original one and see what was interesting about the original. Well, certainly I think these two ones in the foreground here, they really kind of pop out, don't they? So let's see what we can do to kind of bring that effect back into the color. Because in the black and white version, they just don't do that, you know? They just don't do that. So I'm going to start with the magenta and bring that up, and you can see that really does kind of bring that magenta up. All right. I think also red is probably going to help out. Oh, yes, definitely. As I bring that up, that really brings that red up there, doesn't that? I bet you purple is probably, ooh. Yeah, look at that. All right, so now those two paint cans, okay, those two paint cans, which had become just sort of like dull gray. They're certainly a lot brighter. They're certainly a lot brighter. Now, whoops. Of course, the other problem is that when I did those adjustments, though, it also kind of affected a bunch of these other ones. So it really brightened this one up a lot. It kind of brightened some of these other ones up. So what we can do to kind of change that is, well, let's see, I'm going to try the yellow. And you notice, ooh, as I bring that yellow down, okay, that brings it down a lot. Now, it's actually doing it a bit too much. This is one thing I've noticed with the yellow slider doing this. If I just kind of zoom in here, okay, you see what's happening. The yellow does this weird kind of pixelation thing. So you do need to be careful about that if you use the yellow. Actually, it's true kind of all of these image adjustments that you do, and whether that's in Photoshop or in Lightroom. See, the same thing's happening with the orange. Okay, if I kind of zoom in on this one place in the orange, you can see how that's getting that weird pixelation thing that's starting to happen in there. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to dial that back just a little bit and make sure it's not doing that. You just always need to be kind of careful whenever you're doing any of these image adjusting tools, because sometimes weird things happen when you use them too far. You just need to be careful. So I'm just going to go ahead and try the other one. Ooh, that's nice. Okay, now you see when I do that green, that took a couple of those paint cans and really changed those up. I'm going to take aqua. Oh, that's kind of bringing in a little bit more variety. Okay, take blue. Ooh, look at that. Okay. So, truth be told, when I'm going to do a black and white conversion, this is oftentimes what I do, is I just sort of like go in here and I just start kind of messing around and changing things and seeing what happens when you do stuff. And, I think that actually kind of gives a fairly nice thing. I mean, it sort of shows there's a bunch of different variety. I'm going to go back to the color version just to sort of see what that looks like. What the heck? Let's just take that green down a little bit more. Yeah, what the heck? That sort of darkens up a few of them sort of nicely. So you just sort of play around with these the channels in the black and white mixer, and you see the effect that has on the image. Okay, let's go to our beans image here. So again, the same thing. I'm going to take that color, change it to monochrome. It really just killed the difference between the green and the red. So I'm going to take the green, kind of lighten it up a little bit. Looks pretty good. Then I'm going to take the red and bring that down. Look at that. Look at that. Okay. So again, where that color contrast just got destroyed by turning it into a black and white image, you just do a few tweaks on it, and that really sort of brings it back up. And again, I think it's always good to just kind of poke around and see what those. That does some nice thing with those flowers, bringing that blue down a little bit like that. Try the orange. Yeah, maybe just a slightly darker on the orange. The yellow. Yeah, the yellow's kind of not doing a lot. Aqua. Not a lot of aqua in this image. I'll just kind of leave it where it was. I don't think there's a lot of purple either. Yeah, not really. Magenta. Every image is different, so you never know exactly what the different colors are going to look like, what these different changes are going to look like until you just go ahead and try them. So I usually just sort of mess around with all of them just to sort of see what happens. Now, to come back to our tree image, okay, so again, I'm going to make that into a monochrome, okay. It's not a bad looking image actually as it is, but I think it would be kind of nice to see that red pop out a little bit more. So I'm just going to take the red, adjust it up some. That looks pretty good. I'm going to take the magenta. Is that doing anything? Okay, yeah, if we just switch, okay. And see what that's doing, the magenta. It's taking like a few of those little, it's like the tips of the branches. I kind of like that. I'll just sort of bring that up a little bit. Now that certainly did bring up that red tree more than it was before. But it's so similar in tone now to that yellow tree. They sort of blend together a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the yellow, I'm going to bring that down a little bit. I bet you orange. Yeah, that does that. Okay. Ah, there we go. Okay. So again, you see that straight up black and white conversion. Maybe I'm going to bring that red out. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So that straight black and white conversion, basically, because it's eliminating the color contrast, it really changed the appearance of this image. But using the black and white mixer, this is green. I think I'm gonna, I think it looks nice to bring the greens down a little bit. And purple, it's kind of doing, oh yeah, see now we're getting that heavily pixelation again. I want to be careful about that. So, it's just kind of, I mean, that looks pretty good. Maybe that yellow red is a little bit too intense. Anyway, so I'm kind of tweaking around with it. And, just sort of look at it a little bit, see what it looks like. And then I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna leave that right there. I always like to, when I'm working on images, I like to kind of, I'll work on one image for a while, and then we'll work on another image for a while. And sometimes when I come back to an image, I see stuff that I sort of don't like. That one does look pretty good. This one is actually also looking pretty good. Yeah, I think these are all in pretty good shape. Okay, so now, okay, so all of this, of course, is just working with the color mixer, right? It is just working with the color mixer, the black and white mixer. This is by no means the end of what you can do with a black and white image. You still have all of the same image editing tools that you had before. As a matter of fact, I think on this one, the one part of this image that still sort of bothers me is it's got some nice detail in there, but I bet you we could probably pull some of this out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use an adjustment brush. It's my favorite image editing tool. So I'm going to make an adjustment brush adjustment over here, and just start out with, it's fairly dark. I'm going to start off with just an adjustment on the blacks. Now, of course, one of the nice things about using the adjustment brush tool, I can define that adjustment and say, just bring the blacks up, and then I can paint in here with the adjustment brush tool. But whatever I do with it, I can go right back in and change that, have it be a slightly different adjustment. So I'm just going to sort of paint over that area like so with the adjustment brush. And if I hover over that, of course, that red shows me where that adjustment brush has kind of come into effect. And then I go back here and, oh yeah, okay, that is doing that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just going to bring that up a little bit. I might even kind of pull, let's see what highlights does. Not many highlights in there. That's not going to do much of anything. Shadows, that kind of pulls things out a little bit more. It just brings out a little bit more detail in that part of the photograph. I think that's nice. So there's always kind of more things that you can do with an image. You can just sort of keep looking around on it. So you start with the color image, change the profile to monochrome. That pulls up the black and white mixer. Then you can kind of mess around with the image and just sort of tweak with these. Pay really close attention to the relationships between things. Adjust each one of them, see what it does, and have some fun. Okay. So thanks you all very much for watching my very first instructional video ever. I'm going to follow this one up with another video, just kind of looking at the aesthetic issues of the difference between a black and white and a color photograph. Should have that up in a couple of days. Thank you all. Have a nice day.